Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Melody. Thanks for being here. I was saying I feel a little bit like Katie Couric. I probably don't look like Katie Couric, but I've got my newscaster desk here and Walter Cronkite. I probably look more like Walter Cronkite than Katie Couric. All right, so just a reminder, if you'll keep your speakers on mute, and then everybody else won't hear your conversations about, who knows, you know, so we're making sure we're not having private conversations, so you'll just keep your microphones on mute. Speakers today, we're going to start with Judy, and then Renee's going to speak for a little while about FSW things, and then Sean is going to, what?
I'm going to speak after Renee.
Oh, well, yeah, but then, the last person speaking will be Shauna, and she'll talk about some GDK stuff. So that's what we're going to do today. Your handouts, everything we talk about is not in your handouts. I only emailed you the ones that I thought were most important for you to have in front of you while you were looking at the video conference. So, but on the PowerPoint presentation itself, there are page numbers referenced on the bottom that tell you what page in the new manuals that refers to. And I'm going to email everybody a copy of the PowerPoint presentation just as soon as we're done today. That'll go to the coordinators list, so you'll have that this afternoon. And if you need to go back and look at anything, you can reference that on the PowerPoint and see what pages that we were referring to in your new manuals. And I hope that most of you have gotten the new manuals that I mailed out for each of the supervisors, and I sent you an email about that last week. I think they left on Friday. I think they left this building on Friday, so hopefully you got them earlier this week. If you didn't, you should get them soon. If you'll just wait on your questions until the end, but we are going to try to provide enough time that you can ask some specific questions if you have those. So just wait on them at the end, and then we'll tell you it's time for questions, and at that point, if you have a question, you'll just turn your microphone on, and then we'll know that you've got a question. And we'll take them as long as we can until we run out of time. And then if we do run out of time, I mean, we'll certainly let you go if we get done early. But if we do run out of time and you have more questions, you just send me an email just like you always do, so it'll all work out fine. We don't do this so often with these video conferences, so we're not as comfortable doing this with the camera as we are when you're all sitting in front of us. So just have some compassion, be strength-based with us, and we'll all get through this together. So Judy's going to get us started, and we'll get the PowerPoint put up, and y'all just let us know at the end. If you've got specific questions, just make a note, and we'll go over anything you've got at the end. Okay? Thanks very much. Thanks to the trainers for doing this. It's a little nerve-wracking. So here we go.
Okay, I'm Judy, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the beliefs for change. And those are on page 33 and 34. I'm in the parent survey manual, and 69 and 70 in the IS manual. So, I brought my water with me. I'm sorry, I've got allergies today, so I may have to take a drink now and then to keep from coughing, and you all don't want to hear me cough. So, what used to be the strength-based beliefs are now called the beliefs for change. And there are now 9 beliefs instead of 11. So I wanted to go through those with you because when they go to training, they're going to start hearing those beliefs instead of the beliefs that were in there before. The first one is parents want the best for their children. That's a new one. Then repetition coupled with feelings of joy and accomplishment form the building blocks for change. Practice is the path to success. Parents, no matter what environment they find themselves in, possess many strengths that can be used to improve the quality of their parenting. That's similar to the one before that said all people in their environments possess strengths that can be used to improve the quality of their lives. So that one's not new, as new. Everyone is capable of learning and growing. Everyone is responsible for their own behavior, for their own choices, actions and choices. Not discussing, and that's previously, it was everyone has the potential to learn and change. Everyone is responsible for his or her own actions and choices. So that's the same as before. Not discussing concerns with parents denies them the opportunities for growth. There is a reason behind every behavior. This does not excuse the behavior nor negate the consequences, and that one didn't change either. The higher your expectations are for parents' capacity to grow, the more parents are likely to achieve. When you expect more, you get more, and that's just expanded on the previous belief that was when you expect more, you get more. Parents achieve their goals only when They are actively involved in determining their own cause of action. Okay. Talk a little bit about abuse and neglect. I really like in this book that they have put on pages 4 and 5 in both manuals a definition of abuse and neglect. And there are definitions for abuse, neglect, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, domestic violence, and child abandonment. And I'm not going to go into detail on those, but they are all listed and definitions are given for each one. And you might want to look at that at some point because it helps you when you are trying to make determinations of what you're going to do or what your steps are. Page 9 lists the parent care or the caregiver factors for child factors and environmental factors that can contribute to child abuse and neglect. Those are listed in there, and so you might want to look at those different factors. The 9 factors include substance use and other things like that. ACE, I want to talk a little bit more about the ACE study. You'll hear a lot about that as they come back from training now. We go into more detail about that. The ACE study is the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. It was done with 17,000 people who, it's the first study that linked early childhood experiences and how they can affect them later in adult life, even decades later. The study was conducted by Kaiser Permanente and the Center for Disease Control. Like I said, they studied 17,000 individuals and getting regular physical exams. And you have to remember that they came from the general population, not an isolated high-risk group. And what they found was the study examined 8 adverse childhood experiences ranging from abuse of the individual or lived in a household where some abuse took place. And as a result, they found a profound connection between adverse childhood experiences and adult physical and mental health. It even demonstrated a connection with the major causes of adult mortality in the United States. What they found was about 50% of participants had experienced at least one adverse childhood experience, 25% had experienced 2, and 6% had experienced 4 or more adverse experiences. It also found that adverse childhood experiences still impacted adults up to 50 years later in life. Some of the statistics I found interesting were that individuals who score 4 or more are 260 times more likely to develop lung disease, 240 times more likely to use IV drugs, and are 460 times more likely to experience depression. It is likely that 80% of suicide attempts are due to adverse childhood experiences. So you see the connection there, and they'll get that in training when they go to training, and that's on page 12 and 13 of both manuals. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Renee for a little bit, and she's going to show you all something really cool. So I think you'll be excited about that.
So y'all didn't see Judy, but you're going to see me. That's just not fair. But anyway, we're glad you're with us today, and I want to talk a little bit about focusing on the brain and how the brain develops, and then how childhood trauma actually shapes brain development. And we know that the brain develops, it begins developing during the prenatal period while the baby is still in the womb, before the baby's actually born. And what we used to think is that we thought that when babies were born that the brain was wired, it was pre-wired, and it was ready to go. It had everything that it needed, and it was just like when we bring a computer home from the store. We bring that computer home from the store, and in that computer it has a brain. And the brain in the computer has everything that it needs for us to be able to use the computer. So that's what we used to think about babies. But now we know that that's not the case. We know that babies are born, and they are born with part of the brain being ready to be used, and then the rest of the brain is going to develop based on experiences that they have throughout their life. We know that the brain is formed in a building block fashion, and that each part of the brain is built upon experiences and things that take place, and then that's just layered on in a building block fashion. And there's 4 primary parts to the brain, being the brain stem, the midbrain, the limbic, and the cortex area. The brain stem is developed prenatally, so that's the part that is wired, that is ready to go when a baby is born. That's the part of our brain that helps us to be able to survive in the world. It controls our involuntary functions. It controls our blood pressure, our heart rate, our body temperature, all the things that we need to be able just to function. Because think about it, if you had to go around all day long saying heartbeat, lungs breathe, heartbeat, lungs breathe, then we wouldn't be able to do anything else, because we would totally be focused on what it was that we needed to do in order to just keep ourselves alive, to be able to survive. And then the next section of the brain that begins to develop is the midbrain. And the midbrain actually does start to develop prenatally, and then it develops more during early childhood. It also is a survival part of the brain, and it's our basic need part of the brain. It's the part that helps us to know that we need food, we need shelter, and so generally when we talk about the brain stem and the midbrain, we lump them together. And so if I say brain stem, you know that I'm talking about both the brain stem and the midbrain. Then the limbic area, it's developed early. It's developed, and then it will develop during infancy and early childhood. And this is our emotional center of our brain. It's where it's our feeling part of the brain. So, you know, the fact that we can have feelings, that's because we have that limbic system of our brain. Then the cortex is the part of the brain that makes sense of the world. And it's the rational thinking part of the brain. It helps us to be able to think about what we're doing and not jump in sometimes and make those rash decisions, because we actually can think about what we may be feeling that will help us make a better decision. So we know that at birth, a baby's brain contains 100 billion neurons, most of them waiting to connect. And the environment, the things that people do, say with children, helps those brain connections to be formed. Some of the neurons that are not used eventually will be lost. And so we want to be sure that when we're out there, we're talking to parents, that we're telling them about the brain, how the brain develops, and the importance of interacting with their child. So a child's experiences, both good and bad, influence the wiring of the brain and the connections in their nervous system. So I'm going to do a little activity for you, just to talk about the different parts of the brain and how they develop. And so I've talked about the brain stem, and we know that the brain stem, the midbrain, is the part of our brain that helps us to survive. And it's the survival mode of the brain, and as the brain develops, it will be, in a healthy brain, it will be the smallest section of the brain development. Then the limbic area, our emotions, our feelings begins to develop, and then the cortex, part of the brain that makes sense of the world. And so our cortex then is the biggest part of the brain, so that we are able to make decisions. So we know that newborn babies, to survive, they need to breathe, they need to cry, they need to regulate their body temperature, and they need to eliminate waste, they need to have a regular heartbeat. And then the limbic system, when a baby cries and mom and dad pick that child up, then the child is beginning to get feelings of security, feelings of happiness, feelings of satisfaction, feelings of relief. The child is beginning to think, I'm important, someone cares about me. When something happens, they come, they take care of me, they do the things that I need to be done. And then that just helps the cortex to help the baby realize those things. That's the cortex that helps the baby realize they're important, that they have this secure environment, that there's someone there who is going to come and take care of them. They know their world is predictable. They know they can ask for help. They know they will receive that help. Research has found that the cortex in a healthy brain can be 20% larger than a brain that's been traumatized. And we know that when children experience trauma in their life, they are forever changed. And so we want to do all that we can within our power to help that trauma not take place in children's life. Childhood trauma it can be physical, verbal, or emotional abuse. It can be repeated rejection and disappointment. It can be sexual molestation. It can be multiple losses that a child experiences, or losses where a child has not been given enough emotional support to cope. Childhood trauma could also be that we're raised in an unpredictable environment. Or we have parents who are consistently critical. And then it can also be a child who's raised in a home where the parents are abusing drugs or alcohol, or where mental illness may be present. There may be severe neglect, and then a child may witness intimate partner violence between their parents or between a parent and a parent's partner. And so we know that childhood trauma wires the brain differently. And so when the brain is wired differently, then the focus is on survival rather than on reasoning. And many adults who experience childhood trauma are unaware of how those childhood experiences have affected their brain and the decisions that they make in their life. So a child who grows up in trauma, they are more focused on survival, okay? So you think about if you're a child and you come home and your parents are arguing constantly, maybe there's physical abuse taking place as well, then you're going to focus on keeping yourself safe. You know, what am I going to do to keep myself safe? Where can I go? What can I do? And so the brain stem, the midbrain area, then becomes the biggest part of the brain, because that child has to realize that they have to take care of themselves. No one else is going to do it for them. So then if they're in those kinds of situations, then the next section of the brain developing is the limbic, or the emotional section. So when a baby's needs are not met, and the child is traumatized as a result of rejection or sexual molestation or child abuse, then what kind of feelings might a child have? Well, they may develop feelings of fear. You know, they're afraid. They're afraid that they're going to be hurt. They're afraid their parent is going to be hurt. And they may eventually develop some rage where they are upset, they're angry, they're mad at the world, they're mad at everybody. They may have some insecurity going on. And Dr. Bruce Perry, he tells us that when children lack active, healthy social encounters with others, that we see brains where they're not wired properly. And so this can play itself out in negative ways. So the development of the cerebral cortex can be reduced by as much as 20% under these conditions. And so it diminishes, it diminishes our ability to learn. So children may have learning disabilities when they go to school. They may not learn as well because their brain has developed in a different way. Adults who don't frequently have, they haven't had feelings of happiness, they haven't experienced that as children, their brains tell them then that happiness is the absence of pain. And so they really maybe don't know what happiness feels like. They just know that today I don't feel pain, so I must be happy. And that tells us a little bit, too, about addictions. You know, why do people have addictions? Why do they turn to drugs and alcohol? And perhaps it's because of the pain that they experience in their lives. And then the cortex, the part of the brain that makes sense of the world, is the smallest piece of the brain, the smallest developed area of the brain in children who grow up in trauma. Most of what it takes to think critically is not wired into our brain until the age of 10, and then it takes till the age of 20 to 24 for that to be complete. And critical thinking is defined as the ability to analyze our thoughts and actions and those of others, the ability to think about what might happen and to plan for the future, and then we have insight and we can use our imagination. So when you're working with families, especially when you're working with teenagers and young adults, and please remember that their brains are still developing, regardless of if it is the healthy brain or the non-healthy brain, not so healthy, I guess I should say, and that their brains are still developing. And so we need to meet them where they are and work with them in their brain development. So let's think about using our brains in real time. And imagine that you're driving a car down I-75, and you're just driving along, minding your own business, and this car passes you, like they're going really, really fast, and they pass you up, and then they decide they're going to cut back over in your lane, and they almost hit your car. They barely missed putting a big dent in your car. And you pull over to the side of the road and you stop. What is going on in your brain? Okay, if we think about the survival part of our brain, we think about the brain stem. Probably you're breathing hard, your heartbeat has gotten faster, and the palms of your hands may be sweaty, you may be sweaty all over, your adrenaline is flowing. These are exactly the same responses that you had when you were an infant and you were focused on surviving. You're focused on survival. It's the same things that happen. Then what happens in the limbic area of the brain? What feelings do we have? Well, we may have fear. We may be afraid because we were almost in an accident. We may have anger. We're mad because that person pulled over on us in our lane. Frustrated. So the feelings that we have, and you may just have a feeling of relief because, you weren't in an accident and everything is okay. And then the part of our brain that makes sense of the world tells us, based on whether we have the big cortex or the small cortex. If we have the big cortex, it will tell us that it's okay, we're okay, it was almost an accident, the accident didn't happen, and so, we're good. So we can sit there on the side of the road, get ourselves back together, and go on about our business. If we have the brain where the cortex is developed smaller, then we have those feelings of anger and rage in our limbic area, then our cortex may tell us that that person had been following us for a while and that they did that on purpose, they were just out to get us. And so our response could be quite different in that we might just decide we need to pull off and take off, pull out back onto the highway and take off after that car. And so depending on how we respond to situations in the world, usually has a lot to do with the way that our brain is wired. And the protective factors. This is brand new. It's just in your manuals. Your staff will come back from core training now, and they will have these. The manuals are different. And we know that the protective factors, they're a big part of. They're linked with the basic needs of children, and researchers have told us that the type of care that children need to become happy, confident, creative, intelligent, and emotional healthy. So children have basic needs, and when these needs are met and their children are nurtured, then they grow into happy, healthy adults. And so children have the need to be attached securely to someone, and they have ongoing nurturing relationships, and they have a need for physical protection. They have a need to be safe. They have a need for their experiences to be tailored to their individual differences. And we know that you can see that in homes where there's more than one child, in that there are things taking place based upon each child's individual differences. They have the need for developmentally appropriated experiences. They have a need for limit setting. Children need structure. They need limits. They need to know what the expectations are for them. And they have a need for stable, supportive communities and cultural continuity. And they have a need for a protective future. So, if this child sees that they have parents who demonstrate parental resilience, Then the child has nurturing and attachment to those parents. They have social connections. And the child will have a knowledge, or the parent will have a knowledge of parenting and child development. And we know that our parents get this knowledge of parenting and child development from the curriculum, that they have these activities and things that they can do with their children to help their child develop in age-appropriate ways. Parents need to have effective problem-solving skills, and we work with families to help them develop their problem-solving skills, and we talk to them, we ask them questions, and we take the seat of the bystander. We don't jump in there and try to fix everything, but we try to help parents. We try to empower them to be able to solve their own problems. Then concrete support in times of need. They need to help develop that social and emotional competence of their children. And then a healthy marriage or healthy parenting partner relationships. All these things develop these protective factors for the child. So then they grow up in this household made up of these protective factors. This is in your Integrated Strategies home visiting book on pages 15 through 23. It's also in the Parent Survey book, pages 131 through 137. And you can go there in those manuals and see that each protective factor is listed individually with all the things that we do in the work that we do to help these grow and develop within that family. The 5 guideposts for partnerships with families, just to focus on these a little bit just for review. They haven't changed, but they used to be, have a different title. And that's just what right out of my head, what that used to be called. The cultural, no. I can't remember. Does anybody remember? Can't remember what it was, but anyway, sorry, I should have wrote that down. But now it's the 5 guideposts for partnerships with families. And so if we set up our programs to work within these 5 guideposts, we set ourselves up to be successful, and we set ourselves up to be a good support to families. So the first one is the strength-based approach and communication. And we know that sometimes this may be one of the more difficult things that we have to do because society as a whole is not strength-based. And so we are programmed more or less to be less strength-based than to be deficit-based. And so sometimes it's a big thing. We have to start reprogramming our own work, our own brains to where we're strength-based. And we have to be, in order to be strength-based, we need to be an active listener and a purposeful observer. So we need to be watching what is taking place within that family context when we're in the home on visits. Listen to what the parents are telling us, and then to tailor what we do in visits based on providing support to families with the things that we see, the things that we hear. Being strength-based means that we address concerns. And I try to go over this and over this a lot during that week-long training with home visitors because sometimes we go back to our sites and we see, oh, we're supposed to be strength-based. And we forget that strength-based means that we do address concerns. So when there's a concern there, we have tools, which we'll talk about later in the presentation, to use to help us address those concerns with families in strength-based ways. Because remember, we want that child's brain to develop. We want them to have the healthy brain development. We also want to help families to be self-sufficient. Family-centered partnerships means that we have a partnership with the family and that our relationship with that family is the pipeline through which the information flows. So without a relationship, families are not going to talk to us. And so we need to remember that the family is who they define as being the family. And the family is the center of the child's life. We're going to come in there for a while and then we're going to leave. But the family is going to be there. Our family is always our family. You know, you think about your own family, even though maybe, you know, you maybe even live in a different town or different state than your family does now. But your family is always your family. So we are not going to go in and network directly with the child. We're going to encourage the parent to do that. Okay, we don't want to be the one who goes in and does all the activities with the child. We want to support the parent in doing the things with their children. Then all household and family members who are present and important in that child's family should be included in the things that we do, and we need to always remember to honor the culture and traditions of the family. And so we have to respect them, we have to respect their values, and one of the things that I say is that we have to leave our values at the door, and we have to meet families where they are. Then our relationship-based interactions. The relationship that you have with a family is going to be the primary vehicle for their change and growth. And we need to have a relationship of respect and trust. Remembering that families don't care what we know until they know we care about them. So, you know, you can go in and you can have like a string of letters after your name that's 10 miles long, and they don't really care. They don't care how much school that you have. What they want to know, what that family wants to know is that you care about them, that you think they are important, that you are there to support them. We also want to make sure that our practice is culturally sensitive. And so we need to always remember that culture is more than race or ethnicity. Culture can be just the fact that you're from a different part of the state, or you're from a different part of the town, or you have a different religion. So all these things can be culture. So culture is defined as the ways of living evolved by a group and transmitted to succeeding generations. And then cultural diversity, if we have cultural diversity, that means that we can recognize and appreciate the difference in cultural groups. And then if we can actually say that we are culturally competent, we are able to blend knowledge about individuals and groups of people into specific attitudes, practices, standards, and policies to improve our quality of services. And so we need to always be sensitive to the culture of the families that we work with. We need to remember that if we use an interpreter, that we don't want to have our relation or our discussion with the interpreter, but we want to have our discussion with the family even though we may not be speaking the same language, because we want that relationship to take place between us and that family. And then the integrated parallel process is the part of everything that we do and the work that we do. And we treat parents with respect and value in the relationship, then they are more likely going to show respect and value for their children. And when at the office, the supervisor uses the action tools and communication strategies with the staff, then the staff is going to go out and use these things with parents. And so when we integrate these guideposts into our own personal and family lives, when we use them on a daily basis, not just at work, but we take them with us, we use them at home, we use them in everything that we do, then it becomes easier and more natural for us to do these things when we're working with families. And now Judy will talk to you about the parent survey rating scale.
What happened was there were some concerns about the rating scale and that it was not clear enough to parent visitors when they were doing the survey. So the rating scale doesn't really change. It didn't really change. They've added stuff or used clarification. So I want to make sure you understand it won't affect the scores when you score. It's just going to help you be able to put them where you think they need to go when you score easier. Of course, there are no, it's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole sometimes. It's kind of that gray area. So that you will always have questions and concerns. But and not all of the rating scale was clarified. There are some areas that don't have any changes to them, and then there are some that do. The parent survey number, I just want to go through each one of them. Parent survey number 1, parents' childhood experiences. The only thing that changed in that one was 10F, and that just gave you some clarification. Instead of
Their handouts, too. Have them get their handouts out.
Oh, you might want
So
to
they
get
can
your,
follow
I'm
along.
sorry. I'm sorry, you need to get your handouts out so you can, that has the rating scale in it, and look at that as we go along. You can make notes on there, and then I think at the end, maybe if you have questions, you can ask, and I'll try to answer them. In 10F on number 1, they just clarified that it has run away from home overnight. Before it was like a history of running away, and people thought from home, and they thought it was multiple times. But this clarifies that just one time of running away, if they stay overnight, scores 10 points. Okay? Number 2, lifestyles, behaviors, and mental health. Okay. 5D added currently experiencing a minor life crisis without counseling but able to carry out activities of daily living, and that just clarifies a little bit more and gives a little bit more information. 10A that gives clarification on chronic pattern of known illegal activity with or without arrest. And previously, a lot of times people would only score that if they had been arrested before. And so this just says a crime is a crime is a crime. And so what that means is, like, say mom says that when that they're selling drugs to support the family, previously somebody might not would have scored that. Now that it's known that it's 10A, because it's still a crime, even though they've never been arrested for it. Or like if somebody says when they get to drink and they like to get out and drive, well, that would still be a crime, even though they've never been arrested for it. 10C talks about chronic, including means monthly use of drugs. Before, they thought that they had to use every day or every week, but if they use drugs every month for a period of time, then that would score 10C. 10F added chronic drinking or alcoholism within the last 2 years. If it's been within the last 2 years, it's going to score 10, and if it's been over 2 years, then it's going to go to 5E and score there. Number 2 had the most changes. 10I added current indications and or diagnosis of mental health within the last 2 years, and it added the examples of seeing a psychiatrist or other doctor, can't perform daily living activities, or history of hospitalization. So that's been added to give you some more clarification of what goes in there. Then 10J added the example number 3. The other 2 examples were there, but it says depression diagnosed or undiagnosed, which interferes with activities of daily living, such as caring for the children, working, or for self-care, sleeping, and is recurrent throughout his or her lifetime. So that just gives you that this is much more serious than just mood swings while they're pregnant, or in number 5, that they can't carry out the daily living activities. And then there's no changes in number 3, in parent survey number 3, or number 4. So in number 5, 10B just has been changed to say parent is afraid of partner, very afraid of partner. That always has been a little bit confusing, so it clarifies that the parent is afraid of the partner. And since this is a stressor for the parent that is afraid, that's who scores there. Of course, it takes 2 to score 10, so you would need something to go along with that. That's just me getting in my little extra things. Mm-hmm. Parent survey number 6, 5B changed. Before it said pushed or hit, but only one time, and no marks were left. This was added, parent has pushed, hit, or caused physical pain when angry, but not more than one time ever, and did not leave lasting marks. And by lasting marks, they're not talking about scars. They're talking about bruises or black eyes and things like that. Also, on parent survey number 510B, added parent pushes, kicks, hits, kicks or causes physical pain when angry more than once, and you need to make sure you understand, and or leaves lasting marks, bruises, black eyes. So if they push, kick, hit, or causes physical pain more than one time, that would still, even though they didn't leave a black eye or they didn't leave bruises or whatever, or scars, that would still score 10. And remember, if it's worse than what it is in number 5, always go with a higher score in those gray areas. Parent survey number 7 has several changes too. The first one is actually in the 0 area. They added to it a little bit that it says unsure of ages for milestones, but has a plan to find out. And to that they added parent mentions plans without being asked or prompted, such as books, plans to ask doctor or grandma or wherever they might go to get their information. And that's without us prompting them if they mention those things. Okay. In parent survey number 7, 5C has changed. This has been a big one with everybody. Before it said that any expectations of walking or toilet training unreasonably beyond normal, and it listed the age of walking at 4 years of age. They've changed that to 2 years of age, so that may be an indication of the parent was either unwilling to or unable to detect the serious developmental lag. So that changed that to clarify that a little bit better, to make it more realistic. Okay. I was also recommended that I talk to you all by the TAs and some of the other trainers about the crying scenario. That's not on your PowerPoint, but I just wanted to give you some information about that. It should go something like this. How long will you let your baby cry before you go pick it up? And then they're going to say, how long it's going to be. Once you pick the baby up, what are you going to do? And then they'll give you what they're going to do. And you say, well, you've done all that. You fed the baby, you changed him, you rock him, and he continues to cry. What are you going to do then? Each time you ask a question, give them some time to think about it and answer that question. But, what would you do? Well, and that's to see if there's any frustration that sets in. Sometimes you have young moms who say, well, my baby's not going to cry. So you have to think about those. So, and remember, too, this is the one time that you can educate during the survey. And I want to reiterate with you how important this one question is, because stress and frustration set in when a baby starts crying. And having known that and having worked with, this is one of the reasons I'm in this business, is I had some contact with some people in my other profession before I went to the health department where there was a shaken baby. And it was because the man said the baby cried so long and so hard, I couldn't do anything, I couldn't handle it anymore. So make sure you ask this. This is so important, and it's good to educate there so that they know either that they had the right answer or, that research actually shows that babies should be picked up right away. Parent survey number 8, plans for discipline. 0B added a little bit to it. Physical punishment for children over 1 year not used or used as a secondary response to misbehavior after withdrawal privilege or timeout. When the child is punished physically, no implements or materials. And they added some of those. The spoon, the paddle, and the switch and the stick were there. But they've added the hot sauce or soap in the mouth or kneeling on rice, etc. That none of those are used. They will score in a different area. Okay. 10A has just clarified what an infant is, and they've given it up to 12 months of age. I've always told that in training, but they've actually put it in here where any physical punishment used for infant up to 12 months of age. And you need to remember that patting on the diaper or tapping the diaper, all of that is a 10A, any physical touch. Okay. And then 10D, added physical punishment leaves bruises, other injuries, or causes significant discomfort. And that is where you're going to put the hot sauce in the mouth and the soap and things like that, like kneeling on the rice. Those are things that cause discomfort rather than leaving bruises or injuries or marks, that kind of thing. Okay. Again, I want to go over the discipline scenarios. You should be using at least 2 scenarios, one before the age of 1, like pulling up and walking around the coffee table and reaching for like maybe your Coke or your flour, like a flower pot on your table, and what are they going to do? And then, you know, let them tell you what, give them some time to think about it. Because many times they haven't if they're early in pregnancy, or they just, you know, haven't really thought about discipline yet. So it gives them some time to start thinking about that. The second scenario would be maybe when they're toddling good and he goes over and is climbing on the cabinets, or he's going over to the TV and he's pushing all the buttons. You know, what are they going to do then? You want to give them at least 2 and give them some time to make a choice so you know where they're going with that. Many times they haven't thought about it, and that's where they might say they aren't going to spank, but they'll say, well, they'll pat the hand or hit the hand or hit the diaper. You might even add a question like, is there ever a time that you think you might spank your baby? Because sometimes you'll get, maybe if they think the child's going to run out in front of a car or that kind of thing, that they might spank them. Okay. And number 10, this really doesn't apply to Kentucky too much, but they added the parent is single, separated, widowed, or divorced for common law or same-sex marriage as it follows the law of your state or province. And so, but it doesn't really affect Kentucky. 10G, I want to talk about that a little bit because the TAs and the trainers were concerned about how that was being scored. This is to be, 10G is where they say it will change the relationship or that make the parent more responsible. This is to be used when it's felt that the baby will change the relationship to make it different than it is right now, such as making him come back and love me again, or keep me from running around, or doing drugs, or they'll stay at home, or whatever it is that will change the relationship. It's not designed just for, oh, it's going to make us a stronger family if they already have a good relationship. It's not designed for that. Okay? Thank you. I'm going to turn it back over to Renee, and I'm sure you all will have some questions for me at the end. Oh, I wanted to say one more thing. I forgot. Sorry. I want to say one more thing. I want you all to know how much I appreciate the work that you do with the families that you work with. I want to make sure that you know that we take into account that we know you all work hard and you do a lot out there with the families, and I just want you to know how personally I find that beneficial to our families, and know that you're doing a good job, and you need to give yourselves a pat on the back. Thank you.
As soon as I sit down, I remembered what the 5 guideposts used to be. Y'all knew that would happen, right? It used to be called the conceptual framework of the work that we do. So those of you who were trained very early on, remember that conceptual framework. It's been the 5 guideposts for a while, so that may be part of my memory problem. Of course, a little age could be put in there too. And let's just, we're going to review the action tools just for a few minutes. You do have a handout in your packet of materials that Melody sent, and then more specific detail, and you can see at the bottom of the PowerPoint, it tells you where you can go in the different pieces of material to find more information in regard to this information. So the action tools, new term for the communication strategies. Okay, so when your staff come back now and they talk about action tools, you know that they're talking about those communication strategies. And we know that all families have strengths, and we go into the home looking for these strengths so we can build on their parenting competencies. We also know that there will always be those areas of concern, and those areas of concern offer us opportunities for growth and change. So Remember when I was talking before with the 5 guideposts about being strength-based and how we sometimes come back and we think, oh, yeah, strength-based, we look for strengths, we point out the strengths, we talk about the strengths. But let's not forget that we also look for those areas of concern. And these action tools are the strength-based tools that we have to use with families when there are areas of concern that helps them to be able to hear and to think about things in different ways. So the first tool that we talk about is accentuate the positive. And accentuate the positive is one of the easier tools. Also, knowing that when we come back from training, we come back with these things in our minds, then we begin to use the tools, and we sometimes forget that every tool has different steps in it. And so we jump right into maybe the last step of a tool. So always in supervision, listen for the tools that your staff are using. When you're using tools with your staff as a supervisor, be sure to use all the steps of the tools. Remember, that's part of that parallel process. And if we don't use all the steps of a tool, then we are robbing that parent. We're doing a disservice to that parent because they need for all the steps of the tool to be used in order to engage their brains and to help them to use their cortex more, and to begin to change the structure of their brain, especially if it's that brain of the person who grew up in trauma. Okay, because the more that we do strength-based things, the more that we use all the tools, the more that we encourage parents to think about different things, we are changing, not only are we helping them to become self-sufficient, but we are also changing the structure of their brain. So accentuate the positive is in your IS manuals on page 53, and accentuate the positive is a tool that we have to help build a parent's self-esteem and confidence. And we do this by pointing out the strengths that we see them have or pointing out the things that they do well. There are 3 steps to accentuate the positive. I know y'all are saying 3 steps. We never heard there was 3 steps to accentuate the positive before. It's okay. Remember, we come back, we pick up bad habits. So 3 steps accentuate the positive. The first step is that we describe or we acknowledge that parenting skill, that strength that we saw the parent have. And then step 2 is that we use detail. So step 1 is describe, step 2 is detail. So we describe what we've seen the parent do, and we use detail in regard to what we saw. And then step 3 is the impact or the benefit, the outcome, the payoff, okay? So we tell the parent, with the impact, we tell the parent how that the strength that we have seen or the skill that they have used will benefit them or benefit their child. So an example, if you have your IS manuals there in front of you, some of you probably do, you see in the book the example, and I'm not going to read this to you word for word, but there are specific examples of using specific, being very specific. Remembering that we want to point out and describe it in detail. So we describe what we have seen, we use detail, remember the facts, and then that will benefit the impact or the outcome in that the parent will begin to think, oh, this is a good thing I have done, so I'm going to do it again in the future. And that's all about accentuating the positive. It's why we have that tool. It's why we use it. Then the next tool that you have listed on the PowerPoint is a new tool in a way. It's called Strategic Accentuate the Positive. And the only difference in Strategic Accentuate the Positive and Accentuate the Positive is that we are strategically looking for opportunities to use Accentuate the Positive. So if we have a concern, today on our visit we have a concern. So we make a mental note of that. We may even document it on our home visit log, knowing that next week when we go back for our home visit, we are strategically going to look for areas and things that the parent does that are positive things and strengths around this area of concern that we have. So for instance, say that they've been popping the baby's bottle, and you've seen them prop the baby's bottle, you've given them information about why holding the baby close when you're feeding it and giving it its bottle is better than propping the bottle. So you're strategically going to look for opportunities that the parent may actually be picking the baby up and holding the baby while they give the baby the bottle, so that you can use those 3 steps of accentuate the positive around that. They're not propping the bottle now, they're holding the baby close. And then we have problem talk. And problem talk is a strategy that we have that helps us and helps the parent find out more about the situation or the problem that they have. And the way that we find out more about this is that we ask questions. Remembering that we ask questions that start with 5 different words: who, what, when, where, and how. Also recognizing that that little 3-letter word, W-H-Y, is not one of our words to start our questions. So think about when you're doing problem talk, and if you've been asking why, start to listen to yourself as you do problem talk and leave that word out, because that is an accusatory word, and it also is a blaming word, and so we don't use that word when we do problem talk. Problem talk assumes that parents have within themselves the solution, they have within themselves the resources that they can activate to handle most everything that comes their way. And sometimes maybe they haven't, in the past they haven't been solving their own problems, because maybe someone has always solved all their problems for them. And so remembering that we want to encourage them to solve their own problems, to think about what's going on, so that they can begin to be on the road to self-sufficiency.
It's page 52.
Oh,
I've already got hold of the parent visitor rating scale. I took it out the best.
We'll have a 52.
Harrison County, can you name the mics, please? Thanks.
Phil found, would this work for you, actually? Would this work for you is a big piece of Phil found that we leave out. We also come back and we leave out the feel part, we leave out the felt part, and we jump right into the found part. Well, this is what I found worked for me. You know, we jump right into that. And so remember that you need to talk about the feel part, which is how the parent feels. Okay? And the parent may actually use a feeling word with you, or they may not. And so you want to check in with the parent about how they feel about what's taking place. Then in order to use this tool, you have to have experienced something similar, or you have to know someone who has experienced something similar in order to use this tool with a family. So then the felt part is how you felt in that situation. So the feel part is how the parent feels. The felt part is how you felt in a similar situation. The found part is what you found worked for you. Okay, this is a way to share with families that, yes, there are things we can do. Yes, this is something that I found worked for me, without telling them you need to do it this way, right? And then the very last step is, do you think this is something you might like to try? Do you think this might work for you? And then the family has the option of saying, oh, yes, that might work for me, I want to try that, or they can say, oh, no, that would never work, I don't want to do that. But it keeps us, using all these tools, keeps us from telling families what it is they need to do. And remember that we don't jump right into the found part, that we've got to use those feeling words with parents to help them to begin to, especially those parents, remember the trauma, the people who grow up in trauma and their limbic area is smaller, so they may not have those feeling words. And so we need to help them to obtain feeling words, part of the parallel process, so that they then can talk to their children about feelings and help their children have feeling words. So feel is how the parent feels. Felt is how we felt in a similar situation. Found is what we found worked for us. And then the last step is where we ask the parent or the family, is this something that you think might work for you? Then our next tool is normalizing. And normalizing is a tool that we have where we can share information without the family feeling like that we are giving them advice or that we are telling them they're silly because they thought such a thing in the first place. Knowing that we all sometimes have been told things that are not true, right? But we think they're true. And so it's normal. It's okay. It's all right that this is what you thought, but now we know, we have research, we know that this is the way it is. Spoiling is a big part of that. You know, a lot of times parents will think that if they pick up their baby every time it cries, they're going to spoil it. Now, they've been told that by the grandmother. They've been told that by the mother. They've been told that by everybody. And so then we would just simply tell them that lots of parents think that when you pick up your baby every time that it cries, that you are going to spoil it. This is what we know now. Now we know that when we pick up our baby when it cries, that it helps that baby feel secure. It helps them feel loved. And we can go on and on and on with that. So it's a way that we can give them the proper information without making them feel bad about what they thought about any kind of information that they share with us. Then our last action tool that we have listed is Explore and Wonder. And Explore and Wonder used to be called Wondering Curiosity. This tool is one that I've seen lots of struggles around. And it's really not that hard to do. It's a way that we have to address concerns about parenting with families. It's a way for us to help parents build their awareness of their responses and to have sensitive responses to their child's cues, their child's feelings, and their child's needs. And if you look now, the steps, there are not as many steps, and there's only 5 steps for Explore and Wonder. And it's simply what the tool says it is. We would explore with the family what it is that we have seen take place, and then we wonder about what the baby may be telling us. So it's a really good tool to use when a parent is missing a cue. So when they miss their baby's cue, Explore and Wonder is a wonderful tool to use there. Or when they don't have a sensitive response to a baby's cue, Explore and Wonder. So don't forget that you have Explore and Wonder. And with Explore and Wonder, step 1, you describe the parenting practice or the interaction that you have observed them have with the child, just giving them the facts. Then step 2, you want to dig deep, okay? You want to explore what the parent thinks that the baby may be experiencing and why the baby might be experiencing that. Then step 3, when the parent's observations and interpretations appear to be inconsistent with current parent and child development information, you want to explore with the parent what they think the baby is experiencing. Step 4, ask the parent if they think that your thoughts or the thoughts that you all have had together might explain what is going on for the child. And then step 5, explore with the parent what might happen if they responded differently to the child. And then encourage them to respond differently to a child, to use that nurturing, caring, sensitive response to the child. Incorporating integrated strategies into the curriculum. These are our prenatal attachment questions, and also what used to be called the labor and delivery questions, which now the focus is more called attachment in the birthing process. So these are attachment conversation starters. These are things that we can use when we go in with families on that very first visit to start to begin to see what kind of attachment is already taking place with that child. Prenatally, because that attachment begins even before the baby is born. And so by using these questions, we are facilitating that attachment process. We are seeing what is taking place. We are seeing maybe even where there may be some opportunities for us to do some attachment work, even prenatally. Then the labor and delivery questions on the attachment and birthing process are designed to be asked shortly after the birth of the baby. And it helps home visitors learn about the parental strengths and concerns related to attachment and bonding. These go hand in hand with the questions that are in the curriculum. There are more in-depth questions in the curriculum. And so just remember that you do have this information. If you haven't been using this information, or if you have staff, and all of a sudden now that we've talked about it today, you think, I don't remember anybody talking about that for a while in supervision, then this might be a piece you want to go back and revisit, because this is a really good piece of information, really good things that we have to use with families when we start to make those first home visits to see what kind of attachment is taking place or not taking place. Then we have now the 3 M's. Remember, we used to have SMART goals. Now we have the 3 M's to set goals. The first M is for mission. What specifically is it that you, the parent, wants to accomplish? What is your mission? What do you want to do? What do you want to accomplish? This is the section on your goal sheet, what I want for my family or what I want for my baby. So it's the parent's mission of what they want to accomplish. Then the second M is many, and it's exactly what it says it is. You have many steps. You make your steps small and achievable in a short period of time. Knowing that, yes, having or graduating from college is a great goal for someone to have, but that's not small enough for us to see them accomplish. And so we want to encourage them to have a smaller mission and have those mini steps that we're going to see them accomplish as we are there working with them. Knowing that as they accomplish steps, they're going to feel successful, and that will be an awesome opportunity for us to use accentuate the positive with families as they accomplish the steps on their goals. Then the next M, the third M, is for measure. So how will success be measured? These are our target dates for our steps. So we know that when the target date comes, if that step has been achieved, then it's successful, right? And we also know that sometimes we change our mind about goals, things that we want to work on in our own lives, and that our families that we work with do the same thing. So if they don't accomplish a goal, it does not mean that they are a failure. Because just the fact that they can work through the process, that they can get it down on paper, helps them become successful. And if they change their mind, then it might just be that we need to do a new goal. And then the S is for support. So they need to find someone who can support them, someone to keep them focused, and focus on their strengths that will help them accomplish their mission. And that's on our goal sheet. There's 3 separate pieces for support. And sometimes you, the FSW, may be their support, and you are going to keep them focused. You're going to check in with them every week on a visit about their goal to see what they're doing, what they have accomplished, what's got in the way. And if something is getting in the way, then you may have to use some problem talk. Or you're going to want to find out what's getting in the way that they're not getting their goal accomplished. And then the very last thing that I have to talk about is integrated strategies, ongoing training. And this is transferring seminar skills to practice with families. This used to be those 15 follow-up weekly assignments that staff had to do when they came back from FSW core training. Well, they're no longer in the manuals. They're no longer in that core manual that they get that week. They're online. And you can go online at www.greatkidsinc.org, and there will be level 1 and level 2. And so the staff person is going to need to do the assignments. Then you're going to talk about it in supervision, just like you did with those 15 weekly follow-up assignments. The signature line for the supervisor is still going to be on the certificate, so that when your staff person has completed level 1 and level 2 of these follow-up assignments, then you will sign that certificate as their supervisor saying they've done this. And the TAs will be looking for these signatures on the certificates when they come for TA site visits. And just remember that these follow-up assignments are just to get staff to focus on the things that they learned in training when they get back, so that they don't forget, and that they begin to put things into practice right away. And now Shauna will talk to you about the curriculum.
Good morning. Thanks for doing this with us. It is a challenge for me to do video conferences, so I just very much appreciate your patience as we get through this today. And the good news is you're in the home stretch now. So we're going to talk a little bit about GGK. I'm going to work really hard not to read anything to you and just give the highlights, and you're more than welcome to call me to talk about things if we want to afterwards. So just some additions that have been put into the staff development guide that home visitors have been getting this probably for the last 4 or 5 trainings that we've done, and I've always tried to send an email out to supervisors afterwards to say you may notice these changes, but hopefully everyone has this now that you can reference for yourself. So the first one is the GGK being inclusive of parents and children with special needs. This has always been a challenge and a conversation that we've all had as home visitors about how do you adapt the curriculum to work with children that may have delays, or if you have parents you're not quite sure what their understanding level is or what their education level is. They have added 2 pages into that development guide that references some suggestions on how to work with families, how to adapt the curriculum, how to deliver information. Again, this is one of those topics that I think is really relevant to all of us, and I would certainly invite any of you all to call me, email me, and we can get very targeted conversations about families specifically when you see these challenges. So, but those 2 pages are in there, so maybe there'll be some more helpful hints for you. The next one is about how the curriculum is used emergently. Again, they have expanded this conversation and have a couple of pages in that staff development guide for you. When we talk about the curriculum being used emergently, what we mean by that is that it's designed to be used in such a way that you can go where a family needs to go if a family has concerns or if you have concerns about a family. It's not really meant to be used where we open up the table of contents and say, what do you want to do today? While that can be a good tool to use with families sometimes to gauge their interest, your use of the curriculum should really be purposeful and intentional. So for an example of using the curriculum emergently, it would be talking with a family. Maybe they share the concern that that their little one is starting to toddle around and they're reaching for things. They don't know quite sure how to handle that from a discipline standpoint. At that point is when you would want to look at the curriculum. Maybe you planned on talking about language development and cues and communication that day. What you could do then is step into something to talk with them from another section of the curriculum about limit setting and warning words. So it really is about using your finesse as a home visitor to know what families need, for lack of better words, or how to support them with their concerns. We have at our site, I know that we have went through and put together a whole section of subsections, for lack of better words, about discipline, temperament, and routines, so we could have more finesse with using the curriculum emergently when those discipline things came up. So we have a little bit from many different modules that we could talk with a parent about, regardless if that baby was 9 months of age or 18 months of age. So I'd be happy to share that with anybody, again, talk more with you over the phone about it. But just when you're thinking about the curriculum, please be intentional about your use of the curriculum, know where you're going, have a mission and a focus So families really are getting the support that they need. The next one is a new slide that they've added about the learning retention rate, and it shows the learning pyramid. And I really like this, and I think as the ladies were talking about earlier, using the parallel process, I think this works for us as supervisors, as home visitors, and as families. And what this learning retention pyramid reflects is how we all retain information, or how different teaching methods let us retain information. So if you start at the top of the pyramid, it says we retain 5% of what we hear in a lecture, which means it may not be so good for you guys today, now that I see that, because you're getting lots of lecture. So if you attend a session or whatever, we would expect you to retain 5% of that. By reading, the next level down, we retain about 10% of what we read, okay? The next one is audio-visual, which is 20% retention rate. So like today, we try to combine lectures, some handouts, and your PowerPoint to try to up the ante, so to speak, for you to be able to retain the information that we've shared. Demonstration, actually seeing a demonstration and seeing someone do something, lets you retain 30% of the information. Again, one of the reasons why Renee was able to show us the brain bowl visuals. It gives us a much clearer picture of what baby's brain development looks like versus someone just talking to us about that. The next level on there is discussion group. We retain 50% of what we hear when we're in part of a discussion, which is one of the reasons if we're in a training or what have you, we try to make those conversations interactive, because often through that discussion is when our brains actually get engaged to make us think a little bit differently about something, so we're able to retain more of that information. The next level is practice by doing, which is 75%, again, which means that when you do something, you're able to retain it longer or in a different way. And the last one is teaching others. That when we teach somebody else, we're able to retain 90% of that information. So if you think about this, I'll use the example of the home visitor. If we go out and we just talk at parents, we can expect parents to keep about 5% of what we share with them. If we go out and we give them a handout and ask them to read it, then we're going to bump it up to 10% for that parent. So you may spend, a 60-minute visit, and 10% of what you said may land with them. So if you work your way on down the model and you get down to the part about the discussion group and practice by doing, that's what we really encourage home visitors, that we want your home visits to be interactive. We want you to ask questions. We want you to engage the parents' cortex, their critical thinking part of their brain. Because once you key in that part of their brain, they're able to think differently. They're able to retain information. So that's why we want you to have that discussion with them. And then we tell you or ask you to do the activities with families and make the toys. We want you to get them to do it while you're there. It's because we're getting into that practice by doing part. We can tell somebody something all day long, but when someone actually starts practicing something with their baby, or they start practicing a daily do, their retention changes. And it also gives you the opportunity as a home visitor to accentuate the positive to that parent, praise what they're doing well. It also lets you go after one of the strategic ATPs, where you can think about, that parent may need some support with doing step 2 of e-parenting. So on my next visit there, I'm going to be very targeted when I walk in to find some way to ATP that mom if she uses any feeling words, or some way to support that dad with that. So that's what we really talk about in your home visits. We want you to get parents to do things with their babies. Then the last one, teaching others. For me, when I think about us as home visitors, anytime that we can go in and share information with a parent, and then a parent actually plays with their baby and shows their baby how to do something new, we're just adding another level of retention or a skill level for that parent. So as you're doing your home visits, think about this. Think about, how do we give parents the very best of what we have? And it's to engage all of those learning styles, or all of those different teaching methods. And then the same thing is true of supervisors. It's much easier as we work with staff to actually work through things than just to ask our staff or tell staff to do something. So I love that learning retention guides. Just be thinking about that as you go into your practice. The next one, I'm just going to mention to you that they have updated all the outcomes from the curriculum. Kentucky is still featured, our outcomes through the U of L, I think it's the REACH studies. Then they've included information for Minnesota, different provinces in Canada. So there's lots of great new outcomes in there, 5 or 6 pages, I believe. So if you need to do any grant writing or public speaking, you're more than welcome to access that information and see what really does happen for families by using the curriculum. The next one, again, I'm just going to reference is benchmarks and standards. And I found a typo on that slide. It should say crosswalks for how curriculum meets the required benchmarks and standards for early childhood, early Head Start programs. And basically what they've laid out for us in that certification guide is how by using the curriculum, you're meeting the different standards required by early childhood programs, early Head Start programs. So I just wanted you to know that was there in case you needed access to that. The next one is introducing and anchoring the daily dues. And you should have this handout. The top of it should say, Growing Great Kids, Introducing or Anchoring a Daily Due. This is a list of suggestions that we've actually been offering during our GGK week for some time, but now they've put it in a certification guide. And it gives a list of different ways that we as home visitors can incorporate the daily dues into all of our home visits. You know, if we want parents to do the daily dues every single day, then it needs to be something that as home visitors we are offering in every home visit. And sometimes until we feel like we're really skilled or we really have a good grasp of the daily dues, we struggle to think about, well, how can I include it today? Well, this is just a little list that you can use to think about that before you go into a visit. I've encouraged home visitors and supervisors to keep this in your supervision binders, put it on your wall, just to kind of keep it fresh in your mind, how to bring the daily dues to life. There's just a couple on there that I want to hit. On the second bulleted item, it says discuss the tagline and use it whenever you talk about this daily due. I just want you to know what the tagline is in case that's not a familiar term to you. The tagline is, it's the heading that falls underneath the title of each daily due. So like for e-parenting, it's growing compassionate children and empathic parents. For character builders, it is to grow the social emotional health of babies. Play-by-play supports language development. So when we talk about tagline, it's that little explanation that says this is the purpose of that daily due. So we want to get very clear with families about what this daily due is and what does it support. The next one I want to highlight on that list is the fourth bulleted item, where it says use your daily doodad as a visual to support the parents' understanding and learning. People want to know what doodads are. They are the visuals that we've always had. They just added that new little doodad term in there recently, but it is the visuals that hopefully most of you have seen or are aware of. I'll run through them real quick. E-parenting visual or doodad is the protective shield. Character builders are the character builder boxes. Brain builders can be your bubble brains. Play-by-play is a microphone. 4 steps to success is the ladder. And then body builders is the box that has all the different safe and healthy items in it. So that's what the daily doodads are. And the very last one on that list that I want to point out is the one right after that. So it's number 5. It says show the video for this daily due. The videos would be the ones that you get to implement Tier 2 training with. There should be 2 CDs that you got either during training, and I think a few years ago, either Melody or maybe even Vanessa, I don't remember, we gave out CDs that had honestly, 1 or 2 minute snippets of daily dues being done in home visits. That's what we're talking about. Those videos can go out with you into the house to help you talk about a daily due. If you don't have those, please let Melody know, and we will follow up and support you with getting that. That's all I'm going to mention on that list. If there's something else on there you have questions about, call me. We'll be happy to talk about that as well. The next slide talks about GGK groups, tips for using the curriculum in group settings. There are some sites that use the curriculum, not in Kentucky that much I'm aware of, but in sites that I've worked with nationally where they do lots of groups for families. I know that we try to offer family activities at least a couple of times a year. This list we can use in Kentucky to help think about how can we still bring the curriculum into those family settings or into those family group activities. So I just wanted you to know that it's in there in case you're planning on doing a family activity and you want to bring GGK into that in some way. There's some helpful hints there for you. The next one, you should have handouts for this one as well, the toy safety handouts, and it should be several pages. The front of it will say Growing Great Kids Toy Safety Guidelines, and the last page of it will show like a contract signature page. They have updated the toy safety handouts even since the last revision to the certification guide. So what Melody emailed you is the latest toy safety information that we have. A couple of suggestions that we have, or we've been thinking about this, because toy safety is a big issue to all of us, is that we should be reviewing these handouts with parents during visits. On our first visit, when we're making toys, we're getting families accustomed to us making toys. It also references in these toy safety handouts purchased toys and homemade toys, purchased toys and store-bought toys as well. So you want to review the toy safety guidelines with families, and then sites, a lot of sites are already doing this already, where you're having them sign a contract that you have received this information and you understand the considerations to make with toy safety. So they've embedded that into the handouts that they're giving us now. So that back page and that toy safety handout section is actually a signature page or a contract page that your site may want to use. And again, I know some sites have been doing this already, and you may have a different contract that you're already using. But just wanted you to see it, know that it's there. I did talk with Great Kids, and they are currently working on the Spanish version of toy safety handout, and I think they're hoping that within the next month or two that they will be sending that to us, and I'm certain that Melody will get that out to you as soon as we get our hands on that, but it is being done. The next slide talks about supervision and feedback. They've added a couple of pages in, or an expansion rather, something they had before about the supervision process and giving feedback to home visitors. So I just want you to know that information is in there for you all as you're doing supervision, or as supervisors are wanting to strengthen your own skills. There's suggestions there for you. I also want to point out to you one of the handouts that Melody sent that says Growing Great Kids Supervisors Self-Assessment Tool. It is a tool that supervisors could use just like we do our competency development plans. The Supervisor Self-Assessment Tool is for supervisors to take a look at what we think our skills are, what our knowledge base is, and where can we grow, and what can we do to become better. So it's one of those things. I know the supervisor, I did not even recognize that it was there until recently. So it's just a good tool for us to look at for ourselves. So it's in your packet. You can look at it, and again, if you want to ask questions or talk about it, we can do that at the end, or you can call me. The last big thing that I think that I have to talk about is the 6 competencies. They have revised those again, and you should have the handouts, or at least 2 handouts in reference to this. The one I'm going to look at first says the 6 competencies professional development assessment tool. You should be familiar with that layout, and has the 6 competencies on there. They just changed the language. They are very similar to as they were before, but they've added more words to them. And so what I've tried to do, and you do not have to go with this, but what I've tried to do is for each of those 6 competencies, I have, on the next few slides, I've got listed the competency and then how I put it in English that I can understand. So the first competency says, establish caring relationships with families that result in motivation to grow. The way I understand that is develop relationships with families that supports their growth. So I've just taken all the big words in my mind and try to make it a little bit more simplified so I can understand it. And on that next bulleted point there on the slide, it says build trust, use action tools, use GGF to understand what is important to families, support concerns, use curriculum emergently. Those are all the different things that makes up that competency. And if you want to peek there on the handout that says self-assessment of competency number 1, I think it's page 129, the handout that Melody sent, it actually has taken that competency 1 and there is the example of the knowledge and the skills that are involved in making that competency come to life. So again, they've just changed the language a little bit differently, but it's still the same format, we still do the development plans the same way. The second competency they have is, number 2, is cultivating the growth of secure attachment relationships by fostering empathic, nurturing parenting practices. I simplified that to say support parents with being nurturing and empathetic. And then again, I've listed on that last bullet item there, what does that involve, or what does that look like? The next competency was supporting parents to optimize their child's developmental potential. When I changed it to my language, I understand that to mean support parents with understanding and facilitating all areas of child development. And once again, there's the steps that make that up, or the knowledge and the skills that make that up. The next one, which is number 4, nourishing the parent's interest in providing competent basic care, healthy nutrition, and preventative health practices. When I changed that to my language, it says support parents with providing for best care practices. The 5th competency, expanding parents' capacity to manage stress and utilize a variety of community resources that will strengthen the individual parent as well as the family. When I put it in my language, it says strengthen families through learning to manage stress and access resources. Then the last one, incorporating cultural practices into home visits aimed at solidifying the parent's identity and enriching parenting. When I put it in my language, it means use of a family's culture to strengthen the family and parenting skills. So again, you may look at these competencies and decide it means something different to you and your team. I completely respect that, but you're also more than welcome to take a look at, at what I've wrote and include that as well. And Melody will be sending this PowerPoint out, and so you will have my language coming to you if you want to use it and like it. And so it's the same thing we've always done. It's just developing competency plans around those different areas, because the competencies for home visitors is what makes us stronger. It's our skill levels. So the last couple of things I want to mention to you, the resource manuals for competency development. Each site should have at least one set of these books, and there's 2 books. We've been giving them out for as long as I've been doing HANDS now. When I first came on board, they came out in 3-ring binders. In the last several years, they've come out in a spiral-bound book, and there's 2 of them. It'll say like 1 through 6 and 7 through 10, or some 1 through 5 and 6 through 10, Melody's saying. So every site should have at least one set of these. If you're like my site, we have several sets of these because we don't throw anything away. What we'd like for you to do is make sure that your site has a set of these. They've not been changed, they've not been updated, so we're going to stop supplying those manuals and future trainings to supervisors because they've not changed. And so it's just a cost that we don't have to continue to incur. So sometime the next few days, if you take a look around at your site, see if you can find these 2 manuals. If you don't have them, either email Melody, or you can call me if you want clarity on what you're looking for. Melody says they're green. I say they're purple on the front.
Oh, they're purple.
They are purple
They are
on the
purple.
front. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, so look for the purple-covered manuals. And so if you know what we're talking about, give us a call, and we will help you sort your way through that. The very last thing before I give this over to Melody, we are planning for 2 trainings coming up. They're going to be starting this fall and run through the spring. We have some dates already set. One is going to be called GGK Back to the Basics, and the other one is GGK Enhanced with a wraparound in the afternoon. What these 2 trainings are designed to offer are updating our skills using the curriculum. GGK Back to the Basics, I'm excited about both of them, but I'm getting really excited about doing the Back to the Basics one. It will be an all-day training where we will be basically doing the week of GGK in a day. It's an ambitious goal, but we're going to go for it. I suggested, or I think it would be good for anyone, if it's been more than probably 3 years since you've gone through GGK, it would be a great day of training. We're going to go back through and talk about the daily dues in detail. We're going to talk about how to make the daily dues come from theory and help parents put it into practice, really develop parental skills. We're going to be talking about different ways to help parents learn how to apply the daily dues or use them in home visits. So it's going to be heavy on daily dues and really what does that mean, and how do we get parents to understand those and actually begin to practice those. We're also going to be talking about using the curriculum emergently and looking at different structures with it, building your finesse with going through the curriculum. We'll be talking about the competency some in there. So it's going to be a full day. I think it'll be a really fun day. So I don't want somebody to come it's not about coming because there's a problem. That's not the point of this training. This training really is for anyone that has maybe been more than 3 or 4 years. Whether you feel like you have struggles or not, it's going to be a great day just to get updated on how much things have really changed in the last several years. So GGK Back to the Basics will be an all-day training. So Melody has some dates already. She'll be sitting out soon. And then the GGK Enhanced will be a half-a-day training where we're just updating stuff. If it's been more than probably 6 months to a year, it'd be a great little refresher for you. And we're going to also be talking about a new way to talk about the daily dues. We've not talked about before, a new visual that we're going to offer, as well as just some other updates. And then the afternoons will be offering a wraparound to go with that if you any kind of wraparound hours. That'll be available for you as well. So be watching for that, and if we need to set more dates for that, we can certainly do so. So what I'm going to do now is give it to Melody, and I think we're just going to open it up for questions if you all have any.
Okay, so if you have any questions, I'm going to have all of us come up front here. And if anybody's got any questions about any changes that have been made or any kind of clarifications that we need to do, just open your microphone up and everybody will be able to hear you. I don't see anybody reaching for their mute button.
We're ready to go.
This reminds me of yeah, go ahead.
Hello, this is Karen in Lexington. On the parent survey score sheet, on lifestyles, number 10A, chronic pattern of known illegal activity, do you score people we're working with that are undocumented because they haven't been arrested?
It's a good question. I think they've decided that yes, you do, that GKI has decided to do score them because that is a crime, taking into consideration that they are undocumented.
Do you have any follow-up there, Karen?
Does that make sense? Didn't like my answer.
No shit. I think it didn't turn on right away.
We had looked at that in the past, and when you added not arrested, it made me think of it even more.
Yeah.
Right, it does.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Anybody else have, that's a great question. Anybody else have anything that they'd like to follow up or ask for some clarification?
Go ahead.
Hi, on the goal sheet, is there a minimum amount of people that must be listed under the support area? I turned it off? Oh.
No, you did fine. We heard you. You did fine. We did heard you. We did heard you.
Yeah, we did take you too long,
Yes,
Melody.
we did. I know it. Time for me to go back up north. Renee, you want to?
I don't know. I just always in training, we always put 3 when we do a goal sheet. So I'm thinking you should put 3 supports because it can't hurt to have more than one support person.
We in agreement on that?
I'm not in disagreement. I know that I personally have done goals that only have 2 supports.
2 supports.
So, it's just really, for me, it's been more about exploration of what does that support system look like. And sometimes it may come down to the hands home visitor and a partner or a friend or whatever. So, I think
If it's real personal.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Just realizing that the steps, you must have 4 steps on every goal. There's a place there to put 5 because there are families who have more than 4 steps, but you need more than 2 steps. You have to have at least 4. That I do know for sure.
Good question. Anybody else?
Hi, this is Cindy Wilson from Fayette County HANDS. And I have a question going back to somewhat the same, it's the same area that Karen asked about, 10A, under lifestyle behaviors and mental health on the survey, chronic pattern of known illegal activity with or without arrest. If we know, say the mom says, yeah, we're selling drugs out of the house, or yes, my husband drives drunk or under the influence, we know that a crime is being committed. Where does that put us?
As far as reporting?
Yes, as far as reporting this, because we have had this come out where a house, drugs were coming in and out of the house, and I just want to know where this puts us.
That is a very good question. I think that's a site decision, and I think you need to talk to your Child Protective Services or your law enforcement people to see where you fall on that. Different sites will be told different things, I think.
That may be a question that I'd like to talk to Brenda about. I don't know that any of us feel comfortable presenting something that would be construed as a policy about that. I think that it's going to largely be a case-by-case situation. And it may be something that you need to have some backup from central office, or some, not backup, but just, an opportunity to sort of talk a situation through with Brenda, or with probably first of all with your TA. And if you're not comfortable with the resolution that you've come to on your site, at your site. But I don't know that we're in a position where we can make a blanket statement about, yes, this would always be the case, or yes, this would never be the case.
Okay, thank you. One other question. Did you say that you will send this PowerPoint out to everyone?
Yeah, as soon as I get
the handouts that you've done.
Well, you know what? I'll just put them both in. I've sent the handouts. I think I just sent the handouts once. So what I'm going to do when I get back to my office, just here in the next half an hour, I will send to the coordinators list a copy of the PowerPoint, and I'll also just go ahead and send the handouts again, just in case anyone didn't get those. And then also remember that each of your sites should have at least one copy of all of the newest manuals now. And the reason that I sent those out to all the I try to send it out to everyone who does supervision. So if you have 2 people in your site who do supervision of FSWs, then I sent 2 of the new integrated strategies manuals, and I sent 2 GGK manuals. And if you have 1 person that supervises PVs, then I sent you 1 of the new parent visitor manuals. And that way, when people come back to your site after they've been at training, you hire somebody new, and they come back to your site, and all of a sudden they've got different materials than the supervisor has, that can be really confusing. So I did send those out. You should receive them any day if you haven't already, so that you all can be on the same page. So those will be the resource if you're going through the PowerPoint, you see, oh, this references page 114 on integrated strategies. That'll be, if you don't have if nobody else in your office has a new manual, the coordinator should have one.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Anybody else?
I do have a question back on reporting, like if someone tells us that their boyfriend's selling drugs or whatever. When I went to training, we talked about telling them there's 3 things that we would report, and that is if they're harming themselves, if someone's harming them, or if
they're going to harm themselves.
Right. And so that makes them so comfortable to be able to tell us these things, where, that we're telling them that's the only 3 things that we have to report by law, and it really makes them open. I wonder, if we should, it's kind of like a tough thing.
It's an additionally tough thing because it depends on how you define what it means to hurt someone else. Because if you're selling drugs to someone, you're not helping them, and you could be physically harming them. So I acknowledge what you're saying. And I think the reason I don't want to give any more of a solid answer that I've given is because it's a really slippery slope. And I'm afraid if I make some kind of blanket statement that it's not going to be in the best interests of our families in the long run. So I'm not comfortable saying anything that's more specific at this point, but I would encourage you, if you've got a situation, you've talked about it within your site, perhaps you've brought it to your director, you're just really not sure what to do, go to your TA next. If the TA doesn't have a comfortable answer, or if the TA group together cannot discuss it and come to a comfortable answer, then we'll go to Brenda. And we'll keep going up until we get an answer that everybody's comfortable with. But since it's such a specific thing and such a case-by-case thing, I just don't want to say, well, every time this happens, you should do this, or every time that happens, you should do that, because it's really, I really don't feel comfortable until we know, until the decision makers know all the details. I'm just not comfortable saying anything more specific. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, sure.
We have a question as well about the parent survey score sheet.
Yeah, go ahead.
On number 3, on 5B, the parent has used or uses illegal drugs with a child present. I've always been under the understanding that that is with a child that is birthed on up. But recently someone asked about what if the baby is, if the mom is pregnant. That's to be captured under number 2, correct?
Exactly.
We cannot score that if the mom is pregnant for
The
3B.
intent of 5B is like if they're doing it in front of the child.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to confirm that.
Right.
We also wondered about the daily do video that you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And those are those new videos?
No, we've been giving those out for a really long time, and when we gave them to you, they would have been given to be used in combination with Tier 2 training. Because they're Tier 2 training, there's several video snippets that we want you to watch. So there were 2 CDs, and that's how you would have received them, would be during that week of GGK. All supervisors have been getting them. And I know at one point, I don't know how long ago, we just we gave them out to every site to make sure that they had copies. So
Okay.
it would be the 2 DVDs that go with Tier 2.
And I've got many of them. So if you're not able to put your finger on them, or sometimes people have, they've been copied. So sometimes people would have trouble with them skipping or not running or whatever. If you need another copy, shoot me an email and I'll get it right out to you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. These are all good questions. Has anybody else got anything they've been thinking about? Well, if that's it, I would really like to thank the trainers for spending the time to do this. They had to work quite a bit to get this organized. And then, if you ever wonder how nerve-wracking it is to stand up here, I would be happy to have you come. You can talk to the whole state and see how it is up here. It's not that easy to do this in front of a video camera. So thank you all for coming, and thank the trainers, please, for their participation in this. And if you have any further questions or follow-up things that come up as you're going over things in the next couple weeks, just shoot me an email and we'll get an answer for you.